Hello, marijuana stock friends. Lots of action today. I was doing a whole lot of shuffling around, selling some positions for profit in LABS and TRUL and OH, small profit in OH, and got into some plays. So we'll go over those as I get to them. So starting it off with CGC, I actually day traded CGC as well. Got a nice alert from one of our members about a shift in momentum, and we closed up near the high of the day. So this is a scenario where we're watching the 4-hour time frame for clarity on CGC, and without extended hours on, it's nice and clean. If you turn extended hours on, not as clean, but we have our low, the high of the bounce. Here's our higher low forming, and now we're watching tomorrow. Can we break 43.92, or are we going to just form a 4-hour lower high and stay in this tightening range? So 43.92 is the level to be watching tomorrow. Keeping in mind, the S&P 500 has been extremely strong the last couple of days. Today, we saw healthy hourly consolidation. Haven't seen any real pullback on the daily time frame for the S&P 500, just factoring that into our overall broader scope of what's going on in the market. Another day today where the USMJ names clearly stood out stronger than the Canadian MJ names. That's been happening for about a month at this point, and the USMJ space is marked by significant dip buying. Every dip we're seeing is getting bought up. And in my opinion, the USMJ space is going to stay very strong as long as the S&P 500 does. It's just an ideal operating environment, and the bulls are showing us that. So for CGC, 43.92 key resistance, 42.05 is now key support. We'll see which level breaks first into tomorrow. And I did not swing this position because I had too much going on in terms of other swings and not confident in the setup on the daily time frame. But if we can get that 43.92 break, we do have a little high, higher low, and higher high. And that will make this weekly chart look a lot better for these bulls overall. Still a weekly inside bar forming, but we want to see a move back up into the mid $40 range to keep this healthy and very strong consolidation, which it still is at this point. Even though we broke 41.68, so far the bulls have seen the ideal situation of breaking that support, which is straight into a bounce, and that higher low and higher high would only add to that fact. So keeping an eye on the MJ names in the Canadian space, certainly not giving up on them, just focusing a lot more where the attention and gains are, which is in the US space for now. So that's a key pattern to be watching. If that bull break occurs, it's going to increase the likelihood that ACB can see its 4-hour inverse head and shoulders pattern we've been watching for 3 days at this point now. This is day number 3, where we have our left shoulder, our head, and we're watching for our right shoulder to form. There it is with extended hours on. And the bulls have to break 943 and 948 to follow through. If we were to see a red day tomorrow and a move down into the 870s, it would be a bit of a red flag. But we can still see a little bit more pullback. We don't have to necessarily see the bulls show up right into tomorrow. That would be the ideal setup, because the proximity of where we stand to get to those resistances, we would need about 4.5%. And if we pull back anymore, then we're going to need 5, 6, 7% to try and get back to those levels. So ideal if the bulls can hold 892 tomorrow morning and then shift and head back up towards the 920s or beyond. But that pattern is still in play, something to be keeping an eye out for. And again, if CGC breaks bullish over 43.92, we'll likely see ACB up in the 920s or 930s. APHA pulling back now on the daily time frame. This morning it stood out yet again. Everybody was red in the Canadian MJ space out of the major names, and APHA was green, at least to start the day. We broke resistance, saw about 2% of follow through, and then turned around and broke to a new low of the day. So the red flag there was the extremely strong start. There's your lower high and lower low in the first half hour of trading. So lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, all the way fading down to the low of the day, which at this point is pretty much a quadruple bottom at 976 and 977. So on the 4-hour time frame, again, I don't generally use the 4-hour time frame for Canadian MJ, but I do like clarity on this time frame for a lot of these setups. And we can see that after the bull move we made, we didn't really consolidate on the 4-hour time frame after going 15, 16%. So we are just looking for a 4-hour higher low to form, and the bulls have tons of space to form the daily higher low. So we will be looking for a higher low to form in the mid $9 range. And we do have earnings to be watching in the middle of the month. So we'll see if the bulls can ideally see a higher low and then try and see further bullish momentum heading into earnings. But again, what CGC does and whether it's able to break that resistance or not will have an impact, as will SPY. Cronos is still very weak. No follow through here. If we look at the 4-hour setup, similar to CGC, but CGC would have been closing right up here in the upper $18 range, whereas we're closing in the lower $18 range. So right now we've got the low, high of the bull move, and here's our higher low. Looks like today 1876 is a lower high, and if we come down and break 1807 tomorrow morning, we're looking right back down to 1724. So a very tight range between 807 and 1807 and 1876. Again, if CGC breaks 43.93, we'll likely see the bulls head back up towards 19 on Cron, but if not, then we're likely going to see a bear break. And Cron's looking like it's one of the weaker names. No real bear volume, it just doesn't have any bullish momentum. You can see clearly that traders are leaving. I mean, I'm a perfect example. I was trading Cron very significantly often this whole period here, and I've stopped the last couple weeks. Ever since we lost this uptrend, I've moved on to other names aside from oversold bounces. So we're seeing that reflected in the volume to a certain degree, aside from that oversold bounce. And if we fade back down, it's all about 1724. TLRY has a double bottom at the low of the day today, but we have no follow through yet. Bulls have to break 6640 to break the daily lower highs. I like the clarity on the 4-hour time frame for these lower highs. And if we take extended hours off just for clarity, there it is. So we have 7125, a lower high at 6950, lower high at 6859, lower high at 6640. So here's our double bottom, and we have to break the lower highs. If we can't break 6640 tomorrow, we just have a tightening 4-hour range with that double bottom, the key support to be watching. VFF. So VFF is a daily inside bar, tightening range on really low volume. If we break it bearish, that tells us that our daily lower high has been established at 2055, and we'll then have to form a higher low compared to 1676 to see this daily chart tighten up. If it breaks bullish, that tells us our daily lower high has not been set yet, and we'll look for it to be set in the lower $20 range. So it's all about the range of today into tomorrow, and bulls have to break 2036 and 2055 to try and indicate that we're not topped out and the bulls do have further momentum, but otherwise, we are going to look for that daily higher low. So key tight range that should break tomorrow morning. T-God, that 4-hour inverse head and shoulders pattern was there as well, but the bulls have to show up tomorrow to get that going because we have the left shoulder. There's the head, and this is the right shoulder forming now. And again, if we get too far down here, the bull move to get back towards the resistance will be too significant to be favoring this play. So bulls would love to hold the mid 460s and turn around and break 492 to change this 4-hour trend. Otherwise, we're looking right back down at 446, the recent low. Still no red flags in how this consolidation looks on the daily time frame. The volume is continuing to be extremely low. We just have to see the bulls shift that 4-hour momentum, same as ACB. Very similar setup at this point. TRST, red flag today was inability to break the high of yesterday. If you're seeing a 2-day massive dump and the fresh start of a bounce with an hourly shift in momentum and you don't get any follow through on the daily, it's a red flag. We closed at the low of the day. We only have 1021 and 1012 as support levels to be watching. And if those levels break, we're looking at 10 psychological and 932. So it's just a weak bounce attempt. The hourly trend change got no follow through, which means look for flags. And right now I would certainly call the 4-hour chart a bear flag that is potentially going to confirm tomorrow if we break 1012. Bulls really want to defend that support level after being unable to break resistance this morning. OGI, perfect bull volume and follow through, all about 991 that we are approaching the hourly uptrend at this point. Bulls forming a higher low at 969 at the end of the day. Bulls tomorrow morning want to hold 969 and break 991. Otherwise, if we lose the hourly uptrend, we may have to form a tightening equilibrium. But the increasing volume favors the bulls to potentially break that resistance, and it is in play for tomorrow, which is the highest price of 2019. Actually, that's the all-time high. So bulls have all-time highs in sight. Certainly need it for the Canadian MJ space. Aside from LABS, it's the USMJ names dominating the all-time high list. So OGI on watch for tomorrow. Hexo. Hexo's in this 4-hour equilibrium still, and it's playing out nicely. Low, high of the bull move, higher low. Here's our lower high at 908, and we're looking for a higher low to form compared to 835. So 835 to 908 is the current range to be watching. And if we pull back tomorrow morning, potential play off of the support of 835. And if we get this bull break of 908. We're looking at 922 and then up to the recent high. So tightening 4-hour range on Hexo to be watching. PYX, also a tightening 4-hour range. We were unable to break resistance. So we have the clear 2616 resistance, and anything under that is just a lower high. And we topped out at 2581 today. So clear resistance still intact. That is step number one for the bulls to try and shift this momentum. If we break 2616, we zoom out to the daily and anticipate that we're still going to form a daily lower high compared to 3216, the last resistance level that's very clear on the daily. But we have to break 2616, otherwise it's just sideways trading, getting ready for another leg down. LABS, congrats to the bulls, blue sky breakout. I took profit this morning on the gap up open, not wanting to hold into earnings, which are tomorrow morning, I believe. So keeping an eye on whether it's a bull reaction and we head to $4, or whether it's a bear reaction and we look for a higher low on the daily compared to the last low of $2.99. And I just exited because I'm not going to risk the gains over the past couple days, just a little 2-day trade, one night swing, looking for that bull momentum to follow through on that all-time high, and happy enough with that. But we'll watch to see if this daily uptrend will, pretty much it's an ideal scenario for the bulls, because if we see a bearish reaction, we have so much space to work with, 25%, that the bulls could still form a higher low. MedMen. So I did make an entry into MedMen today, just right at the low of the day, where it was looking at a bottom fishing playoff $4 support and a small position. Odds of getting stopped out of bottom fishing plays are high because you are trading against the trend, but the risk is low because the stop is right there. So it's the kind of scenario where you can get stopped out 4 bottom fishing plays in a row, and the one that makes it and plays out is going to make up for those 4 little losses if you're keeping your risk and reward ratios right. So I actually still have this position that I need to exit tomorrow on any sign of weakness, because I was live streaming at the end of the day and unable to do my manual exit, and none of my friends in the chat room told me that support had broken. So I'm still in a small position, but at this point the loss is a quarter of a day loser compared to a day maker. So again, very small position. Worth keeping an eye on MedMen, but again, that was only because we had a double bottom the low of the last 2 days and had pulled back 5 days in a row. That's the only reason I was interested in that trade. Otherwise, we're patiently waiting to see if the bulls can form a weekly higher low on MedMen. IIPR is another play that I am beginning to scale into. Daily chart, we're looking for a potential volume climax in the near term to indicate a temporary bottom, but this just reminds me a lot of the last consolidation. And if you go back and look at the video, either from March 7th or March 8th, I forget which day I was talking about it, but I made an entry here where I was beginning to scale into this weakness, looking for the daily higher low to form. So I was beginning to scale in. I only filled 1 position out of potentially 3, and then we saw the rocket ship. I sold after just a couple days because I was only looking for a couple day bounce and earnings were approaching. But look how similar we have this move here. Actually, first we'll do the percent pullback, all-time high back then. To the low was an 18.5% pullback. All-time high to where we stand right now is an 18.5% pullback. So that's one signal. 4-hour time frame. RSI bounced off 30 last time. RSI is at 30 this time. Hourly time frame. Last time. Grinded along the 30 mark before the bounce took off. Grinding along the 30 mark. So this is enough for me to begin scaling in. I make 1 entry today in the 77s. Then if we keep dropping, I'll make an entry in the 75s. Then I'll make my 3rd entry in the 73s. And there's no clear stop level aside from 66.55 nearby, but it is a play based off of RSI levels, previous history, and knowing that we are likely to form a weekly higher low to maintain this uptrend coming off of all-time highs. So that has me confident. And again, I'm just looking for a short-term bounce. If this were the bottom, which I don't think it is yet, but let's say 76 were the bottom, I would just be looking for a short-term bounce for up to, 84. But that in itself is a 10% bounce. So certainly worthwhile, but looking to scale in, and we'll see if we can get a bullish reversal candlestick on the daily time frame. We need an hourly trend change to indicate that the daily support is established. And right now, resistance on the hourly is 78.24, and then the high of the day, 79.75. So patiently scaling in. Again, not wanting to be out of cash early and still falling with no support level nearby. I don't have a stop loss because my anticipation is that if we keep dropping down to the levels where I would be getting my 3 out of 3 positions, if that happens in the next 2 days, this 4-hour RSI is going to be down around 20 and at historic bounce levels. So even though we have the previous bounce example, I can look back historically and say, okay, in the history of this stock, IIPR bounces when the 4-hour RSI gets down into the low 20s. So I know that if I'm going to get my other 2 positions filled as we drop down into the low 70s, that 4-hour RSI would be approaching historic bounce levels. So all in all, I'm comfortable scaling into this position slowly, and we'll see if we can get that shift in momentum in the near-term future. OH, so a big-time recovery for these bulls. And again, this is what I'm talking about with the USMJ bulls buying dips, bearish reaction, pull back 8% on the deal, and then we bounce 8%. So the volatility is there. The bulls are looking right back at the all-time high, 12 psychological, and then the all-time high of 1230 are resistances. If we can't break 1230 and we start to pull back, we'll have a 4-hour equilibrium to be watching with our high, low. I actually like it better on the hourly. But high, low. If you can't break 1230, it's a lower high, and then we'll pull back and look for a higher low. But the bulls are going to have a chance at that resistance, keeping in mind that we must keep an eye on what CL is doing, because these names are now correlated to each other, and CL hit a new all-time high today. So that's an even more drastic recovery. The all-time high yesterday, the bear pullback of 11%, and just like that, the bounce from this deal is putting those bulls right back to a 12% bounce to the all-time high. Healthy hourly consolidation. Most important short-term support for me is 1593, and the bulls are going to test that all-time high of 1640 first thing tomorrow. Very strong recovery, keeping the bulls in control in response to the deal announced yesterday. TRUL, another strong day, another strong bull volume showing, and I exited here just to sell into strength and lighten up a bit after entering down in the 17s, selling in the 19 area. But it's all about 2030 resistance, which is approaching, and that would give us weekly continuation if that breaks. And if that breaks, we're looking at all-time highs. And again, if the S&P 500 stays strong, I don't see any reason the TRUL isn't going to be going up to all-time highs. If we lose the daily uptrend on SPY, I'll change my tune. But at this point, we're very strong, and the MJ bulls are buying. So anything on the daily time frame for TRUL above 1605 is a higher low. Getting conflicting earnings dates. We have one for Thursday and then one for the end of the month. And I'm not exactly sure which it is. It's either the 4th or the 30th. So we have to keep an eye on those earnings. But one thing that is for sure, we're seeing bearish reaction to earnings, and IAN coming up is a perfect example, and bulls buying those dips. So TRUL, hourly support, not really clearly established. We do have one level at 1968, but I wouldn't call that a strong support level. We can pretty much say anything above 1855, the low of today, is a higher low, keeping the bulls in control. So IAN, gap down open, bulls buying the dip in a big way and closing at the high of the day, breaking the lower high everyday pattern that was intact 5 days in a row. And we'll see. It's a little bit tricky now because of the gap as to where we stand, but we do have a clear hourly uptrend with the higher low and higher high into the end of the day strength. Anything above 715 keeps the hourly uptrend, and resistance from here is going to be up at 762 and 780. So we'll see how long these bulls can keep this hourly uptrend in their favor, as we are hoping, bulls are hoping, that another weekly higher low has been established now at 699, the low of that reaction. So congrats to dip buyers there. CURA, 4-hour equilibrium, broke bull. So we had the high, low, lower high, higher low. You could have used 1256 if you wanted higher risk and higher reward for a bull signal entry. Otherwise, 1283 was the clear signal. And we are now up a solid 4% from that bull break, heading to the all-time high, 1369, all-time high in sight for tomorrow. So how many U.S. names have we covered so far where all-time highs are going to be tested tomorrow? We're looking at CL, OH is in the ballpark, CURA, and there was more than that. CWeb. So CWeb hit the all-time high today. Big time follow through, but we have to be cautious of a temporary top being set because we did see Not a double top, but close enough, and the reaction from it has us cautious just because we had the all-time high, significant pullback, bulls buying the dip again. Look at the size of this midday bounce. 6.5% bounce from the low of the day back to the high of the day of bulls buying the dip. Sell off at the end of the day. If we break 29.49, that tells us to zoom out and look for the potential of daily consolidation. So looking at it on the hourly, 29.49 breaking loses the hourly uptrend, and we'll look for that healthy daily higher low to form. CWeb has certainly been on a huge bull move, and even just in the past 3 days, we've gone 27%. So consolidation will be healthy. This one is a big time runner that may need to cool off a little bit if we do break that support level tomorrow. KHRN, so the bear flag, or I should say the bear signal yesterday, we certainly got the red flag. Pointed out the fact that we closed at the low of the day, a slight uptick in volume, and the bears followed through in a big way today. So that changes it. No longer is it a potential cup and handle pattern. It is now a very clear weekly equilibrium. Doesn't mean we're giving up on it. It's just a different setup. We have the high, low, lower high, and we're looking for a higher low compared to 301. And if the 4-hour RSI, which is close to oversold, it's down at 40, and the hourly RSI is right at oversold. But if we see another pullback tomorrow, break 336, and head down to the 320s, those RSI levels are going to be getting oversold, heading to a key support level. So it's worth keeping an eye out for a potential entry for a weekly higher low to form, and then we'd be looking for a bounce back into the previous support area in the 370 to 380 range. We'll have to see an hourly trend change to have any confidence in the bounce, but worth keeping an eye on because this is a nice tightening pattern setting up on the weekly chart. HARV also tightening up, very healthy hourly consolidation, but a tight daily inside bar. Support 1338, resistance 1372 and 14. If we break 1338, we means to zoom out, and we'll look for a daily higher low to form. And if 1338 holds, the bulls keep complete control, and we're looking at all-time highs. So a lot of all-time highs out there. TRUL, I'm very interested. Need to double check when these earnings are, but this could be the next CWeb in terms of seeing bullish surges in an area with a lack of resistance. You can see after 2030, there is no resistance nearby. So that's currently about 2.5% from where we stand, keeping TRUL on watch. So again, these bulls are buying. Just want to make sure that we have game plans for every position of USMJ because they are very overextended. And if SPY were to dump out of nowhere, we know that SPY's biggest dumps occur surprisingly fast and out of nowhere. If that were to happen, it would derail the momentum of the USMJ sector, in my opinion. There is no sign of that happening, but we just want to protect and have a game plan so we're not trying to make decisions in the heat of the moment when emotions are their highest. So, like I said, I'm not giving up on the Canadian MJ space. There's still plays there. VFF and Cron gave us some really nice bounces just a week ago, but there is a new kid on the block, and it's USMJ. And again, the catalysts, there's so many catalysts, it really just hasn't even started. That's why it's so exciting. Big money still cannot get into these plays that are traded on the CSE and the OTC. We don't have any massive deals of big companies taking billion-dollar stakes in these companies. We don't have any of the law changes underway, the domino effect, rescheduling, Bank Act, recreational, federally legal, or medical, federally legal, or 2020 election. Is the market stays strong and the S&P 500 doesn't ruin things, things are going to be exciting in this space for a while. I appreciate you watching. Hope you had a good day. We'll check back in tomorrow. See you then. Do good things. So adventure time, we are still in Utah, heading to Bryce Canyon National Park, hanging out in some caves and in some canyons in the meantime, and an otherworldly place. So in Bryce Canyon, it's known for all these, I think they call them hoodoos, but it looks like those sand castles you make when you put the wet sand in your hand at the beach and you dribble to make those really cool shapes. And these are just eroded kinds of rock from rain and time and wind. They create some really cool patterns and some nice colors and landscapes. Sand castles bigger than you are. Bristlecone pines. These are the oldest trees in the world. A lot of people think that redwoods are the oldest trees in the world, but it's actually bristlecone pines, and they're bristlecone pine trees that were alive 2,000 years ago. I think the oldest one was around when Troy was happening, something absurd. But there are trees that were around when Jesus was doing his thing. That's a pretty cool looking, I mean, it just looks like a castle. Someone built a castle out of big rock. And it's wind that makes these holes and how they erode. Nice little looking hole. Some morning mist making things nice and eerie. And I ended up camping at a spot. There was a fire that ran through here. So this is where I was camping. And to have that mist going on, and there were these cows in some national parks and national lands, they have agreements with ranchers that allow for grazing and things like that. So there was this little herd of cows where I was camping off in the mist, and it was this eerie but very cool spot. This was the overlook of right where I was camping. The colors were insane. Again, the camera doesn't do a great job here, but the purples and orange and green and gray, pretty much a rainbow in the rock. And that's about that. Next, we're going down to Las Vegas. And there's actually some decent nature spots outside of Las Vegas. Lake Mead, and there's a mountain range, I forget what it's called. But I went to Las Vegas. I had a couple friends there, and he was a pro, quote-unquote, pro poker player at the time, and I've been playing poker since high school. Made a video because there are huge amounts of correlation between trading and playing poker. So that's on our YouTube channel if you want to check it out. But went and lived in Vegas for about a month on this road trip, just bouncing around between camping and crashing on my friend's couch. And we'll get to that next time. See you then.